When Harbor Freight had their big jack stand recall, I started reviewing jack stands with locking pins. Check out my past videos to see those. Now, Harbor Freight has a new set of jack stands, and yes, it includes a locking pin. We'll take a close look at this and how well it's made and compare it to the others. And this video is not sponsored. I went to Harbor Freight, picked a box of these off the shelf, and paid 40 bucks. There are a few things Harbor Freight is really highlighting on these, including the reinforced base, the locking pin, and what they call precision welds. I'll show you a closer look at all those in a minute, but first, let's see how these work. Inside the box, you get 2 jack stands rated for 3 tons, but that is 3 tons for the pair, so 1.5 tons each. Right away, we see a good sign here. These meet American Society of Mechanical Engineers standards. These are essentially ratcheting jack stands with a locking pin added. So you lift the post to set the height, then you insert the pin to lock the stands. And they also have this little clip on a chain that you can insert there so the pin cannot fall out. These ESCO pin-style jack stands are a little simpler, but a little less convenient. You lift the post to set the height, line up the holes, insert the pin, and then it also includes this clip so the pin cannot fall out. Now let's take a look at the pins. On some jack stands, like the ProLift stands I reviewed before, the pin locks the pawl in place so it cannot disengage. On these Torin stands, the pin goes under a tooth on the post and engages it for support, but as you can see here, it barely engages the tooth. And it does not stop the pawl from disengaging. Watch this if I lift the handle. Now, only that little bit of engagement on the tooth is what's supporting the post. On the Harbor Freight, they took the best qualities of both the other designs and combined them. You can see the pin engages a tooth on the post. It's more engagement than on my Torin stands, but it also blocks the pawl from disengaging. I gotta say, I like this design. Harbor Freight also reinforced the frame of the jack stand with this bracket. You can see there is not one on the Torin. What this does is prevent the frame, the legs here, from spreading open when there's weight on the stand. That is one of the ways these types of stands can fail. And when I look inside at the bracket, they did a nice job welding around it. Speaking of the welds, that is another thing Harbor Freight is touting on these, and they are not fibbing. The welds on these are very clean, very consistent. I don't notice any significant porosity or gaps in the welding. Compared to what we've seen on some other jack stands, these Harbor Freight stands are very nice. There's not much to say about the posts on these. They are cast, they look fine. One of the negatives of this design overall is that this is not very wide, so that, for example, if you were putting it under the pinch weld of a car, it's putting a lot of pressure on a small area. That is really just kind of par for the course with this type of jack stand. The Torin's not really much better. If you go to the Laren, it does have a significantly wider top because it's a little bit of a different design. And then if you go to the ESCO, you can see you get a really large top. I measured the thickness of the base material on all 3 of these, and the Daytona is the thickest, but only by a few thou. Here are all the stands on their lowest height setting. And for comparison, here they all are on the highest height setting. And for safety, I do not like to use any jack stand on its highest setting. That's when they're least stable. Get a bigger jack stand that you don't have to lift up all the way. I was a little bit skeptical when Harbor Freight said these stands were improved, but they are. The welding is about the nicest I've ever seen on a jack stand. They reinforced the design, and I really like the way they set up the locking pin. I do like these new Harbor Freight stands, but out of all the ones I've reviewed, I think these ESCOs are still my favorite. They are more money, but for that you get a super sturdy, really well-made stand. And I think it's worth the extra money because jack stands basically last forever. So these Harbor Freight stands are not my favorite out of all the ones I've reviewed, but they do seem well made and like a really good choice. What do you think? Which one of these would you pick? Let me know in the comments down below, and thanks for watching.